Greetings from South Carolina. Danny Staten here on the Danny Dan blog. You're welcome to the pre-show for 13 o'clock live. 13 o'clock live officially begins at 1 a.m. 13 o'clock live, right guys? This is kind of the pre-show where I'll play a few songs, talk to you for a few minutes, get acquainted. But right now, do you hear that? Happy to say I had some crazy activity around the old homestead tonight. What the hell? Oh, I didn't know I had a stream on. Once again, greetings from South Carolina. Danny Staten here. Is everybody picking me up? Is everybody hearing okay? Greetings, Squatching Cowboy. Welcome to the show, my friend. It's good to see you, my brother. Oracles and Beyond. Oh, really great to see you. As I was saying, though, I have had some activity tonight. Earlier, about 2 hours ago, there was loud knocks in the woods. I heard what sounded like a tree fall, and then, did you hear that? And then about 75 yards away, I heard some. You hear that? Strange howls in the night here in South Carolina, captured on a live stream. It's the first activity I've had in a while that amounts to anything. YouTube, are you hearing the howls live? Actually, YouTube, I was kind of hoping this would happen. Did you hear that? I had planned one kind of show tonight. This might go a different way. That's right, YouTube. I made a video earlier on the Danny Staten channel. I'll put it up tomorrow morning where you can actually hear wood knocks and howls. Really clear, I think. I hadn't watched it back yet. But as I stated, I had a lot of activity. There was some serious wood knocking going on earlier. Right when I first come out here, though, what sounded like about 75 yards away, I could hear whoopee howl sounds. When people watch this back, I hope it picks up real good. Let me know in the comments if you heard it. Whatever it was seems to have quietened down now. But that's crazy. Just when the stream starts, you start hearing some wicked howls. That was unplanned. I hope it don't throw off my schedule too much for the entertainment I have planned for tonight. I'm going to return to my vantage point up here, hiding in like a blind, a carport where nobody can see. What? Well, nobody can see me sitting here. You'd have to walk right up on and see me. I'll put the camera faced out that way. And if you see anything, you can let me know. I'll be in the chat on another phone. And let's get this show started. Let's get it started with the theme song for 13 o'clock. That was Pat McCormick with Risk Thrill Factor, the theme for 13 o'clock live with Daily Dan. So once again, how's everybody in chat doing tonight? It's so good to see a few people actually showed up. And I'm putting something in the chat right now. And I'm going to drop a link from my other channel, the Danny Staten channel, the one you see me on in the chat. It says Danny Staten. And if everybody will grab that channel, you can see the video I made earlier tonight go up on there in the morning. And I recommended all my friends with the little blue wrenches, be sure to drop your channel's links in the chat and tell people what you've got coming up. You know, I support community growth here at the Daily Dan blog. I hope you like my theme song. I'm going to pull up another song for you here in a second. I'm going to play you something, I don't know what. As we get ready to start 13 o'clock live. My bad, ladies and gentlemen. I was picking this up for a minute so I could take a look at the adjusting on it. If you see anything out there, be sure to let me know in the comments below. That's right, YouTube. Welcome to 13 o'clock live. I'm your host, Daily Dan. Here in about 8 or 10 minutes, we'll kick it off and listen to a really cool interview with Jeff Meldrum I found. It's from a really small channel with only like 52 subscribers that he done, and I don't think nobody's seen it. I think it only had like 8 views. I don't know how stuff like this slips by the Bigfoot community, but he shares a few things in this interview you might not ever have heard before. It's going to be a real good one. It's going to be a treat. It's going to be a rarity. Stay tuned and enjoy the show.
Now in South Carolina, way down yonder, there's a big old critter that likes to wander around my backyard sometimes late at night. Well, it ain't no beaver, bobcat, or bear, 'cause he's 8 foot tall and covered in hair, and the first time I seen him, he give me quite a fright. Well, he eats from my garden and pees in my grass, and he stinks like a skunk mixed with grizzly bear ass, and he scares my cats when they smell him come around. Well, he spends his time peeking around trees, and he thinks what he wants, and he does what he please, like scratching his butt and making a grunting sound. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, knocking on the trees, chucking rocks and screaming like a troop of chimpanzees. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, running around my place. Are you the missing link, or are you from outer space? Now you may wonder, what does a Sasquatch do when he's wandering around at 1:45 in the middle of the night because he's feeling down? Well, he comes on over to visit my house. I think he has a little thing for my spouse, 'cause she always feels like someone is around. Well, he looks in the windows and checks out my wife. Can't say as I blame him. She looks pretty nice in a fuzzy robe as green as the foam of the sea. Well, he stands and he blinks as he ponders and thinks about humans and love, and she smiles so sweet. He wonders what the heck she sees in me. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, stop looking in my windows. I think it's kinda creepy, you voyeuristic weirdo. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, keep your big paws to yourself. And you got a lady Sasquatch to raise your Sasquatch whelps. Well, I made a report to BFRO, them fellers that got that Squatch hunting show. Finding Bigfoot is what they're all about. They said people see him all the time, make lots of reports that are just like mine, and if you see him too, go ahead and give him a shout. Now I wish I knew some Sasquatch lingo. I'd invite him on over to party and mingle with me and my wife and a few of our closest friends. But I guess I'll smile and just wave hi. The next time the big guy comes walking by, saying hello just might become a trend. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, my big old hairy friend. There's some that don't believe in you, but I will till the end. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, hope your legend never ends. Didn't know that we were neighbors, but I hope we can be friends.
I hope y'all enjoyed that. That's like one of my favorite little Bigfoot songs, and I always like to start off my show by spinning that song. That's kind of like my little trademark. I always do a show called Sasquatch Saturday on Daily Dan's The Good Stuff. You should check it out. And on Sasquatch Saturdays, 9 out of 10 times, I'll end my Sasquatch Saturday show with that song. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Really, really soon now, we're going to jam it up. We're going to start the interview with Jeff Meldrum. I know you can't wait to hear that, but I thought I would have time maybe to spin one more song before we started it. What do you think, you two? Want to hear one more? If I can find us a good one. And we'll play a cool song, and then right after the song, we'll go into the Jeff Meldrum interview. And I know everybody's waiting to see it. I'm kind of giving people a few minutes to get on in here so they can catch out the interview with Jeff Meldrum. I don't want certain people to miss out, but it looks like everybody's still over watching that other guy who decided to stream at the same time me in the Bigfoot world. I appreciate that, dude. You're an asshole. You know who you are. And anyway, this is my good friend Warhorse. He's going to sing you an old country tune. And as soon as he gets done, we'll find that Jeff Meldrum interview and throw that bad boy at y'all. And then after that, and after the show's over, 13 o'clock usually runs about an hour. And after the show's over, I like to spend an hour shouting at my friends, playing some other videos by some other guys. I call it cool time. Stick around and check that out after the show. Oh my God, I love that song. Well done, Marty. And that's my friend, Marty, better known as Warhorse, over at the Cherokee Outlaw channel. I put his link in the chat in case you want to go check out some more of his music, which you'll probably be hearing a lot of here on 13 O'Clock Live, one of the people who's nice enough to let me throw their tunes out there. And I really enjoy your stuff, Marty. I really do. I'm so glad you decided to join me right when I started playing your song. It's like we mentally connected. It's like we touched base. It's like you knew I was fixing to play your song, and all of a suddenly, there you were. Ah, did you hear that, YouTube? There's weird sounds in the air tonight. I'm going to be quiet for 1 minute. Are you hearing that, YouTube? Am I just tripping? You hear these loud howls, but they're way off in the distance. I told you it's been a very active night here tonight. I had tree knocks earlier, about 2 hours ago. I heard a big tree get knocked down in the woods. Then I heard some whoopity howls. I even started a video. You can see that on the Danny Staten channel tomorrow of some of the crazy activity I was catching. But as promised, this is officially a show, so we're going to get on with it. And I'm going to bust out an interview with the man himself, Jeff Meldrum. It's from Ziad Yusuf. I don't know how you say his name. Ziad Yusuf's channel. He's got less than 100 subscribers, and this video didn't get a hell of a lot of views. So I'm thinking most people hadn't heard the interview, and I'm going to bust it out for you. And the other voices you hear will be the little goose who run the channel talking. So you have to pardon them, but it's part of the show. So sit back, relax, fire up a big old blunt if you got one, maybe drink a mixed drink. Chill out, relax. Keep your eyes on the camera. Help me watch for anything that moves out there and let me know in chat if you see anything. If you see anything going on or I hear anything in the background, I'll stop the interview and check it out. But be sure to let me know in the chat. And this will be the interview with Jeff Meldrum.
Let's just do some introductions first. I'm Zahid.
I'm Elliot. If you want to introduce yourself.
Meet you both.
Do you want to introduce yourself and your experience working with Bigfoot or the field?
Well, I'm Dr. Jeff Meldrum. I'm a professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University, where I teach human gross anatomy in the health professions programs. I research the evolution of human bipedalism and vertebrate, especially primate functional morphology, more broadly and generally than that even. But that's sort of the focus that served as the nexus for my interest in Sasquatch. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I was introduced to the subject of Sasquatch when Roger Patterson came to Spokane, Washington, and showed his film when I was about 11 years old. And subsequently, though I pursued a career in physical anthropology, as I said, with an emphasis in bipedalism. And so it was that, the notion that there might actually be another bipedal hominin still on the planet. What an interesting discovery that would be. What an interesting natural experiment of comparison and contrast with our own condition. And so that's how my interest, and also that is why my interest has largely focused on the footprint evidence. I mean, not only is that the most prolific, the most ubiquitous evidence that we have, really, objective evidence beyond eyewitness encounter descriptions, but it deals directly with my expertise in adaptations of the human form and function for walking on two legs. And so I spent a lot of time with footprints of humans and non-human primates, and always have had an interest in animal tracking. And so I had that expertise to bring to bear, and thought I could say or could offer some important insights, build upon what had been done. My predecessor, Dr. Grover Krantz, was also a physical anthropologist, and so he knew a great deal about anatomy, not so much specifically, or not as much specifically, I shouldn't say it that way, as it relates to bipedalism, but he certainly made some very important and interesting observations, many of which I concur with, some of which have served as good springboards to generate somewhat different interpretations of the evidence, and produce a model of the Sasquatch foot that is quite revealing, and says a lot about the prospects of these things being simply hoaxes. You know, somebody with carved wooden feet strapped to their boots, tromping in the woods or down a logging road. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So you are a Bigfoot believer, correct?
I don't like to use the word believe because it has such a connotation. The ideological skeptics use it as a very pejorative label. You know, they say that you're a true believer, therefore you're no longer objective, you're no longer critical in your thinking. So rather than say believe, which connotes kind of a position of faith and acceptance of something in the absence of evidence, I say I'm convinced on the basis of the evidence that at the very least this is a worthy scientific question. Whether it's resolved or not, in my mind, is beside the point. But, you know, on a personal note, I'm absolutely convinced. I mean, I'm as convinced, short of having stood and seen one myself. I mean, I've found footprints in the field, which for me are every bit as convincing as if I had seen the footprint maker standing there in the woods. So, yes, I'm convinced.
All right, well said.
So, if you're convinced, what do you think it would take to change the collective belief on the opinion that, you know, Bigfoot's kind of just like a mythological sort of urban legend kind of thing?
Right,
like,
exactly.
What do you think it would take for more people to be convinced that he's actually real?
Well, the conventions of science demand that a type specimen be provided before any novel species is acknowledged or recognized. And so that means a sufficiently diagnostic piece of or an entire body has to be acquired in order to establish that taxon, to establish a description and diagnosis that recognizes it, that differentiates it from other animals. So short of that, I mean, we have lots of other types of evidence. You know, I mentioned the stories. I mentioned Roger Patterson's film. So there's photographics, there's anecdotes, there's the footprints, there's hair samples that defy attribution to other forms of wildlife. We're hoping that eventually we'll get DNA, and that's probably the next best thing. There is actually a growing discussion in the scientific literature about whether it's justified in the case of rare and endangered species to recognize a novel species on the basis of DNA alone, rather than require the lethal collection of a type specimen. And especially in an animal like a large-bodied ape, you know, with very few numbers, presumably, and a complex social structure, it's quite problematic to take a specimen. We have this out here with wolves. A we'll just allow the harvesting of a couple of wolves. Well, you shoot an alpha male wolf of a pack, and you don't just harvest a single individual. You disrupt that entire pack, can throw it into disarray, and can potentially impact the survivability of that entire group. And so there's a lot more implication than the simple selectively taking a single individual. So my efforts in the field have been to try to collect hair or skin or blood through various snares and snags and so forth to see if we could get DNA evidence. And my most recent initiative, I've been developing a collaboration with a couple of other molecular biologists, is to collect samples for eDNA analysis, to actually what we call environmental DNA, where you can take soil samples or water samples from the environment, and DNA actually persists out there that is shed in bodily fluids. Even breathing sheds DNA of the individual. And then there are now techniques that have been developed for extracting that from these samples. And so we've had a challenge with the hair samples in getting DNA, because one of the characteristics of the hair is a lack of a cellular medulla, that central core that has the dead stacked hair cells. In the absence of those, there's precious little DNA in the keratin shaft, which is mostly just extracellular. So anyway, I don't mean to ramble on that side of it, but back to your initial question, that's what it's going to take, and a change of attitude. I mean, basically, that's like hitting them with a 2x4, because there is so much suggestive evidence that goes beyond the urban legends and the myths, that many are very biased against. I mean, the attitude simply is, it can't exist, therefore it doesn't exist. I've actually had a colleague who said that to us indirectly through an editor who was forced to reject a paper that he had solicited us to write. And in the end, she and some members of her of the scientific advisory board for that journal said, actually a magazine for the California Academy of Sciences, that's what she said. She said they can't exist, therefore they don't exist, and it doesn't matter what evidence they think they have. So I mean, that's, you've a priori made up your mind from the outset, and have totally closed your mind, therefore, to the possibility of considering any evidence to the contrary, which is, in my opinion, about the most unscientific attitude you can adopt.
Yeah. All right. So on that topic, do you think that we'll see this kind of definitive, irrefutable proof sometime soon?
Well, it's hard to say, because there are only a few people really that are out there systematically and in an organized fashion looking for that evidence. And so it's going to be probably by happenstance. I suspect, I envision two scenarios. Either someone like me who goes out and harvests samples and finds the DNA. That will be one way to at least tip the scales. I mean, as we discussed, that may not be sufficient to ultimately, conclusively demonstrate. It may be challenged. Alternately, it'll be purely by happenstance. Somebody will walk in with a tooth or a jaw or a femur of something they pick up in a stream bed or in a cave, or a truck driver, on a remote mountain highway will hit one, and somebody will stop and collect the corpse, or a hunter shoot one, or something like that. But again, there's no way to know when or if such an event will occur. So I don't know. I can't put a timeline. I mean, I've had, colleagues now who have come and gone, have passed, hoping that they would be alive long enough to see this question resolved. And unfortunately, it hasn't happened in their lifetimes. And here I'm just turned 62. I'm getting up there myself, and hope that I'm still around long enough to or participate in the discovery. But we'll see.
So just to expand on that a little bit, would like one bone or like one, just like a single piece of evidence be enough to extrapolate like the existence of a whole thing, similar to like how Gigantopithecus, for example, there's like very few, I think, bone samples, like they have the jaw and the teeth, but you can still, see that there was a whole species of ape from that.
Right, exactly. And that requires that whatever bone or piece you have is sufficiently diagnostic. And in the case of Gigantopithecus, teeth have long been the basis for much of our taxonomy of animals, and so especially mammals. And so finding a tooth, a collection of teeth, and there's about a couple thousand Gigantopithecus teeth, and a couple, just a couple, two jaws really of Gigantopithecus blackie. But that's enough. You're right, that's enough. And I mean, that should be a lesson, though, too, the rarity of those remains. Were it not for those very few scraps of bone, if someone said, I think that there's a good chance that there was a giant ape alive during the latter Pleistocene in China, one that could have stood 9 feet tall and weighed 1,200 pounds. People, would just laugh them off. It's King Kong. You're just making up King Kong story. But with those, that just takes those few bones to establish that. And so that's why I say if somebody walked in, so every time someone brings me a bone, I get excited. But so far, it's not been a bone from a large ape.
So, you touched on it a little bit when you talked about the wolf packs. There are some sightings of Bigfoot. Most of them are solitary. They see one animal, but there are other incidences, such as the Ape Canyon attacks, where there's groups of them.
Right.
What is the working theory of what a Sasquatch collective or society would look like?
Right. Well, even the Ape Canyon incident you mentioned, it requires. I mean, I think there were some assumptions made and maybe some embellishment. The miners never claimed to have ever seen more than one at a time, and they shot one, which presumably tumbled into the canyon. And then they the stories about their cabin being assailed. Of course, it very easily invokes visions of hordes of apes pitching boulders onto the cabin of the roof of this hapless cabin. And again, it could have been only one or two individuals that pursued that, the miners in that cabin. Anyway, most evidence that we have, be it footprint finds or be it eyewitness encounters, are of solitary individuals, by far and away the majority. Or the next being what we think are females with offspring. And we have examples of infant footprints, that are only a few inches long in the company of what appears to be a female. So for me, that combined with the distribution patterns that begin to sort of take shape or emerge from the repeat appearance of recognizable sets of footprints, a recognizable individual leaving multiple footprints, suggests that they have a fairly large home range of about 1,000 square miles, give or take. I mean, that's just a very rough approximation, which obviously is going to vary depending on the habitat, terrain, and topography, etc. And I suspect that they probably have something that's similar to an orangutan, a social structure we refer to as a noyu, where the male dominates an area, a territory. He doesn't dominate a harem, but rather a territory, and that territory encompasses the home ranges of several females. Those females and their offspring, are go about their business separately, unless the female is receptive to mating. And so in the case of an orangutan, for example, that only happens every 4 to 8 years. And when they are then in heat, they will seek out the dominant male, the large male that can advertise his dominance and presence and keep the other males at bay. And I kind of think, I mean, there's some evidence to suggest that sort of a pattern. For example, in Northern California, where Patty Patterson, the Patterson-Gimlin film subject, was observed, there was also a large male. And he left a footprint that was 16 to 17 inches and much broader than hers. I assume it's a male based on the size and the robusticity, the breadth. Whereas the females, like Patty, have a much more gracile foot outline with the sides more parallel instead of quite flaring. And they are considerably smaller, a couple of inches smaller. So there are some situations where we have evidence that suggests that's a pretty good model, a working model, at least a null hypothesis for now. But solitary behavior seems to be the rule rather than the exception.
All right, so going back to what you were talking about with the footprints, how do you determine like if footprints are real or fake?
Right.
Or like, how do you like kind of see similarities between footprints in different areas?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, a great deal has to do with the context. It's much easier to try to ascertain the credibility of a footprint find if the discoverer has documented the site well. And, when someone just shows up with a single isolated footprint cast, it's a little more problematic unless they're very clear. And a lot of the examples you see publicized are the best examples. And those are a bit rare. It's hard to leave. There aren't a lot of surfaces out there, with the exception of dusty, Forest Service or logging roads or stream banks, sandbars and such, where there's enough soft substrate to take a footprint and hold the detail. If that detail is present, then we're looking for several things. Obviously, we're looking for a footprint that's bigger than human on average. Now, obviously, they're not born big, so there's going to be some smaller ones, and I have a whole size range. But that large size eliminates first the possibility of misidentification of, say, a human or a bear track, for example. Then we look for other features like the tremendous breadth that the footprints tend to show. And from fairly large, substantial samples of what I think are credible examples, if you plot, breadth to length ratios on a bivariate plot, humans and Sasquatch separate out quite distinctly. Even if you scale them so that they're as ratios, so that they're dimensionless, the Sasquatch are distinct because their feet are so much broader, which is a function of their mass, their large size. The volume of an organism increases to the third power cube, whereas the two-dimensional, the surface area, only increases to the square of those dimensions. And so for the foot sole, the plantar surface of the foot, to kind of keep pace with this increasing body mass, they have to be disproportionately wide and have more contact with the ground. Hence, that brings to another important distinction. Humans are characterized by a very evident longitudinal arch. The Sasquatch foot is largeless, it's flat, and has a very flexible midfoot, whereas ours is stiffened to help support that arch. Theirs is quite flexible, and it gives them a lot more maneuverability in very steep, uneven terrain. Got ahead of myself. Humans have evolved for moving on rather flat, open terrain. We can get around in the mountains, but we're not as well as something like a chimpanzee or a gorilla and or a Sasquatch. So those are some of the major differences. There's other subtleties in the proportions of the toes and the angle of the toe row and such. Obviously the ability to flare the toes, to extend them and flare. Humans, that brings up another one. Humans, because of shoe wear, their toes tend to be quite compressed. And in fact, the little toe is sometimes turned completely on its side. And you even get the toe pad sometimes pressed so tightly together. If you ever get a box of grapes or a crate of grapes that's been packed in real tight for a period of time, and you take them out, they don't look like little globular grapes, but they look kind of like cubes with edges that have been pressed in. Your toes are just like that. Sometimes you can feel on your little toe that calloused little ridge that runs across the pad. And those things will show up. They'll transfer to footprints. I've had cases where people brought me in examples, and sometimes they're pretty impressive in size. I've had one that was 13 inches long, but the guy had a very
Wow, this is really great. Y'all enjoying this interview? Let me know in the comments below.
Okay, let's go.
All right, I'll start this off again. All around the world, you've got Yeti, Yowie, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Skunk Ape, right? There's sightings all over the world. Do you believe these are different subspecies of the same overarching species, or would they be different species of great ape?
I think they're different species of great ape or even hominin, members of our immediate family. One of the things that we've learned in the past several decades is that human evolution, rather than proceeding in a rather single file march with one lineage leading to us, we now know that it's a remarkably bushy family tree, and new species are constantly being added to it. I mean, I had a slide that I was using back from 2007 and that showed the phylogeny, and I tell the viewers that this is now obsolete, by the way. I would need to add at least 5, maybe as many as 7 new species, depending on how you split hairs and debates about recognition of species. So a very bushy tree, and then on top of that, the acknowledgement that some of those branches have persisted until far more recently than ever would have been imagined before. The discovery that really drove that message home, finally, was the discovery of Homo floresiensis, the hobbit, Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
I mean, here suddenly we've got what can only be now accepted as a very early Homo, like Homo habilis, barely different than a late Australopithecine in its postcranial anatomy. And yet it's less than 50,000 years old. So how did they, what has happened between East Africa 2 to 2.5 million years ago and East Asia 50,000 years ago? There's a lot of the story we don't understand. We've got examples of Homo erectus that are as young as 25,000 years. We've got Homo heidelbergensis in East Asia that's 20 to 25,000 years. We've got Neanderthals that are anywhere from 10 to 20,000 years old. Now we've got Denisovans and possibly the other mystery, which might be Homo heidelbergensis, but mystery species. Why would we think, in the face of so much evidence that indicates in the past the rule was multiple species coexisting across the landscape, why would we think that now we're the only ones left when there still are all these reports of Yeti and Yowie and Yeren and Sasquatch, etc.? So, and what's interesting, and you made a point, and just let me emphasize that they aren't found all over the world. There's no sightings from the middle of the Sahara Desert. There's an ecological basis for the distribution of sightings, and certainly there is some cultural overtones and movement, that influenced by the movement of populations that take their racial or ethnic memories with them when they move. But for the most part, these are wild men of the woods, and the stories are associated with montane forest ecosystems, and that's significant. I think if there's a biological, ecological basis for these creatures, that's more than just simply a mythological figure or an archaeological psyche, manifestation of the human psyche.
Yeah. So to expand on that a little bit, how would you distinguish evidence between like either being like a great ape or a hominid?
Right. Well, the benchmark has been, up until quite recently, bipedalism. That was seen as the distinguishing adaptation that differentiated the hominin lineages, branches. Now, that boundary, that simple dichotomy, has kind of gotten a little blurry. I mean, to advocate that Ardipithecus ramidus is an early hominin when it has a skeleton that's hardly differentiated from any of the other Miocene apes. If it is indeed a hominin ancestor, then we're going to have to think about non-bipedal hominids. Maybe bipedalism didn't emerge until that split had already occurred for some time. Or, on the other hand, it's very possible that bipedalism evolved convergently in other lineages, like maybe Gigantopithecus. I mean, when you're a giant ape, you can't spend your time up in the trees because a fall is fatal. And if you're a temperate ape inhabiting temperate forests, pine forests, and deciduous forests, most of the fruits that you're after aren't up in the trees, especially if it's a coniferous forest. They're the fruits, the sugar content that you're after is in berries on shrubs in the understory. And so when you're down on the ground and you're that big and you're that heavy, there are certain constraints in a primate that has evolved the manual dexterity, the upper limb mobility that we have. Having our shoulder blade on our back, and this is getting a little technical, but having the shoulder blade on the back so that when we're on all fours, it meets our upper limb bone, our humerus, at an angle instead of being aligned for compression, that's a problem. That puts shearing stresses on the joints as well as at the elbow and the wrist that are a problem. Sometimes people have real trouble doing push-ups because it causes pain in their wrist, and it's easier to do a push-up on either holding on to those hand supports to do a push-up, or to, like I do, just do it on the backs of my knuckles so that my wrist stays straight. That's a manifestation of the flexibility that we have due to hand gripping and arm hanging, as opposed to walking on all fours like monkeys do, for example. So my point of that is all those problems become amplified when you're 1,200 pounds. And so if you do come to the ground, there's only two ways to get around. You're either doing it on all fours like a gorilla or a chimp, or you do it bipedally. So bipedalism could have emerged independently and convergently in another lineage like Gigantopithecus, and it's not necessarily a very close hominin affiliate. So either way, you'll bump into arguments out there on the internet and so forth. There are many of my non-professional acquaintances take exception to my discussion. They basically boil it down to apes have a divergent big toe, humans don't. So since Sasquatch doesn't, it's a human. Well, my humanity doesn't reside in my big toe and its position relative to the other toes. It resides in a lot of other characteristics. And so we see a broad range of toe morphology in apes and early hominins. And so that's not a very good argument, in my opinion. It's one element, but it's not the end-all element.
All right. A while back, you were featured in the History Channel show Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
You didn't really speak on if you believe Bigfoot had connections to aliens, but you rather give contextual information about Bigfoot. Looking back on the show, what are your thoughts?
Well, I always, those kind of opportunities, it basically boils down for me. If I'm too choosy about where I'll talk, then they'll just get someone else, someone maybe much less qualified to offer something to the audience that's thoughtful and informative and accurate, scientifically accurate. So Even though it can come back to bite me. Sometimes I do speak to those audiences, and I've had good experiences overall. I personally don't think there's any connection between the two. I think what connections have been suggested are purely coincidental. I mean, there's a bear in the woods too, so you're going to explain the presence of the bear by citing UFO sightings as well. It's that kind of an argument, in my opinion. I just don't see anything and have not experienced anything personally that would suggest a paranormal aspect to Sasquatch. As you can tell by the answers I've been giving so far, our discussion, I see it as a biological entity, and I think its anatomies and behaviors are absolutely consistent with a large hominoid, be it ape or hominin. It still is. I don't have to, resort to interdimensional portals and UFOs and time travel and shape shifting and all those kinds of things. As interesting as they would be, I mean, wouldn't rule it out. But that's the science. Occam's razor is often misapplied or misinterpreted. Parsimony does not say that the simplest explanation is more likely to be true. It simply says that until you can reject a simpler explanation, you're not justified to elaborate and make more complicated explanations. And so far, the simplest explanation in my mind is that it's a biological species, just like any other out there. It's just very rare and elusive and has not been discovered in the fossil record directly, unless Gigantopithecus is an ancestor. It very well could be that, but otherwise we just don't have the evidence. But that doesn't alone justify us to leap to fanciful explanations.
All right, so kind of on a similar note, there's a lot of myths of these ape-like creatures or like wild men.
Right.
For example, just in the Northwest specifically, you have the Zunaclaw or the Buckwist,
exactly,
among a lot of others. So how do these stories factor into modern research or how you look at evidence?
Well, I think that they are interesting and worthy of research on their own merits. The presence of such a figure so uniformly throughout these cultures that reside in the ecological areas, the forests, the mountains and forests of the various continents, is, in my opinion, a very persuasive piece of evidence. I mean, cryptozoology is an interesting discipline in that many of the discoveries of unexpected species have occurred after the explorers or the field zoologists have listened to the stories, the accounts of the native peoples. I mean, many people who, even modern conservationists, when they go into an area and they want to very rapidly compile a catalog of the animals of the region, what do? They ask, who's the best hunter in the village? And then they ask them, what animals do you see in the woods? And what's interesting, there was actually a survey, a study that was done on that with that method in Southeast Asia, and so frequently, just matter-of-factly, was mentioned a little hairy person, like the orang pendek description, that the authors actually included that in their catalog, and they put a footnote that said, we realize that this is going to be rejected or scoffed at by many of the readers of this article, but it was cited with such consistency and such or so consistently and with such consistency of description that we felt obligated to include it in our catalog. So for that reason, I think it's important to give note to those. The interpretation of that kind of, or not that kind, but the more cultural, like the Zonaquah and the Bukwas. For example, I've talked to Native Americans who are just matter of fact, well, yes, that's what you call the Sasquatch. Then there are others who quibble a bit and say, well, the Bukwas and the Zonaquah are two completely different things. The Bukwas are these pasty-skinned creatures, ghost-like things that come about when someone dies at sea, and they come out of the ocean and they frequent and haunt the forests. So it's hard to know for sure, but boy, when you have a depiction of a Bukwas and it has all those distinguishing characteristics, the receding chin, the very large distance between the mouth and the nose, flaring nostrils, sunken eyes and heavy brows and receding forehead and shock of hair and squared off teeth with no canines projecting. I think what can happen is the image is based on encounters with the Sasquatch, but in efforts to explain these man-like creatures, one way of accounting for them is that they are lost people lost at sea, people lost in the woods that have changed or shot. One argument was that they were shaman that were out in the woods to study and to go through their vigil, and in the process transformed into a Sasquatch. Well, I think those are all just so stories after the fact, but at the root of those stories are these real biological entities. I mean, they do the same thing with other animals. Lots of their stories are about animals that have personalities, that have certain personality traits, that can talk. You've got the coyotes that's the trickster and always getting in trouble and trying to rip off somebody or another. That doesn't make the coyote any less a biological entity, nor do they think of them any less as a biological entity. So it's a whole fascinating area to consider, but I think if Sasquatch does exist, let's just rephrase that. Assuming for a moment that Sasquatch does exist, we would naturally expect it to show up in the cultural stories and lore in the manner that it does, not the other way around. That the fact that it's in the lore lessens the likelihood that it's real. I think it's just the opposite. And like I said, the same argument can be made for so many other animals. All the animals, for that matter.
Yeah.
So deforestation, habitat loss, is a big issue facing all animals.
Sure.
As our presence into the woods expands, we deforest and we expand our cities. How will this change the outlook of Bigfoot populations and maybe increased sightings?
Right. Well, it seems to, and you would assume it is indeed having an impact. There was actually an interesting study that was done by an acquaintance of mine who was a student at the University of Colorado and was majoring in geographic information systems. He did his senior thesis on Sasquatch applying GIS technologies, and his question was what was the geospatial impact on the distribution of Sasquatch reports in the Pacific Northwest over a 20-year period, correlating it with the expansion of the Seattle, Tacoma, and Portland, Vancouver metropolitan areas. And he demonstrated a significant impact on a correlation on that distribution with a shift to higher elevation and more southerly latitude in relation to both of those metropolitan areas, which is really quite interesting. So I think we are having an impact. I mean, it stands to reason. Whether it means there will be more reports and more encounters is hard to say, though, because hand in hand with the habitat degradation, there's a trend over the past 50 years of people recreating less and less in the remote parts of the forests. You know, backpacking was all the rage when I was in high school, and there aren't that many people that go on those trails. Not as many as were back then. And most hunters these days, people are not in as good a shape, and so they hunt from four-wheelers. And very few people go into the far backcountry to hunt. So there's a kind of a pulling back from the backcountry that certainly has an impact on the reports. It's always hard to judge those kinds of trends or data because they're impacted so heavily by things like social media and the internet and the accessibility to stories and to share your stories and for others to be aware of your stories. Plus the plethora of stories that are becoming less and less substantial or substantiated. So there's more stories about bumps in the night. There's more stories about tree structures and things like that almost, in my mind, have very little, if anything, to do with Sasquatch. The good, solid reports by credible witnesses of encountering a Sasquatch in under good conditions of visibility and or finding good clear footprints remain quite rare. So hard to know. I mean, you could pick and choose and argue in any number of directions about the impact or the rise or fall of reports. There's just a lot of messy data out there.
All right, so to expand on that a little bit, since there are, so few sightings and the population is so spread out, do you think it's possible that these species could become extinct, like maybe even without us even knowing?
Sure, that's possible. I don't think we're precariously near that point, given the ongoing reports that do trickle in, as few as they might be, relatively few. But anytime you have an animal that has, we talked a little bit about possible social structure, and that certainly has that combined with their life history, has an impact on or it is important for considering their population structure and numbers. And so whenever you have a large-bodied, slowly developing, infrequently reproducing organism, they're much more sensitive to impact to their habitat and less resilient if they are extirpated by famine or by disease or such. And so that's a very serious implication of all of this, of our interaction with them. It's even been speculated that just as European contact with the Native American populations was decimating because they had no immunity to so many of the diseases, smallpox and cholera and measles and such, many of the higher primates are likewise susceptible to those diseases, tuberculosis, for example. And the fact that they are solitary, it works to their advantage. They're less likely to spread such communicable diseases rapidly and widely. But nevertheless, it's been suggested that just as the Native American populations fell precipitously, there may have been a bottleneck for Sasquatch as well, as European settlers came to the west and elsewhere. I mean, there was immigration from China and Asia as well, other parts of Asia as well. can't remember what your original question was. Just the impact of human.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether they're on the verge of extinction. Yeah, I think that's something that we certainly should bear in mind. The problem with those kinds of conversations is, everyone who's made any kind of attempt, either feigned or sincere, to get them protected, and however one would do that, it falls on its face, because it just becomes a joke. Why would any legislative body seriously undertake such action in the absence of any definitive proof that such a creature exists? I mean, there was one time an instance where a environmental impact report was turned in, and under the possible species impacted, they listed Sasquatch, and it was done just kind of as a tongue-in-cheek, but it got all kinds of flack from various quarters that a serious report would be, would incorporate such just a jocular gesture like that. I mean, it wasn't entirely tongue-in-cheek. The people may have had, personal convictions, and they may have felt that it was just a way to kind of draw attention to the potential that there are species yet to be discovered in these impacted and imperiled habitats. But nevertheless, can become quite a either controversial or a ridiculed undertaking.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, just to wrap it up,
Okay.
Is there anything else you think we should know about Bigfoot?
Oh, gee. Let's see. After I prattle on for so long, it's hard to think of what I haven't. And I think we touched on a lot of the significant aspects. Your questions were good and they covered quite a broad spectrum of both the science and the cultural aspects, the societal aspects that influence the search for research into these types of questions. I mean, a lot of times people are so focused on their own research and are so conservative in their approach to science that they don't allow for the possibility that there are things like this out there. I mean, if it was out, I had a department chairman who, he's an endocrinologist, but he's also a lifelong resident of Idaho, and his retort to me was, I'm born and raised in Idaho. I've hunted and fished all across the state. If it was out there, I would have seen it. I thought, wow, that's quite the assumption on your part, that anything out there to be seen, you've seen it. He's the same individual who said to me, well, after all, Jeff, these are just stories. And again, this lack of a scientific attitude. I said, well, stories that potentially leave footprints, that shed hair, that void scat, that vocalize, that are witnessed by credible witnesses, that, I said, I think it's a little more than just stories. And, he would have nothing to do with it. Or then I run into the people. I gave a talk at the University of Wyoming, and we got to lose it. Anyway, I'll tell you that story another time. All right, well, thanks. It's been my pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, thanks.
The thoughtful questions.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh, that was the interview with Jeff Meldrum. Let me know what you thought about the interview in the comments below. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I found it very informative. He told me several things I was unaware of. And I dug real hard to find this interview. Very few of his things are not copyrighted on YouTube, so finding something to play for y'all isn't an easy task. So, after all that, I guess we deserve a little musical break. I'll be back to talk channels, talk YouTube, and just hang out in the after show. But for now, this is Danny Staten on the Danny Dan blog. Thanks for joining me for 13 o'clock live. If you just stay on this channel right after this song, I'll hang out and chat with y'all for a while in the after show. Play some more music. Spotlight a few channels and play a few of their videos maybe. You never know what's going to happen in the after show. Remember, I have a slight case of Tourette's, so forgive me for anything that might come out of my mouth in the after show. Be sure to hang around. This is Estelam Efra with some mood music. You're listening to 13 O'Clock Live with your host, Daily Dan. Maybe not. Thought I heard something weird. Well, maybe not. I want to thank my friends over to Salam Efra for all their wonderful music they provide me here on the Danny Dan blog. So welcome to the after party. I hope y'all enjoyed the show. I really enjoyed that interview with Jeff Meldrum. Did y'all enjoy it? Be sure to let me know in the comments after the video and in the chat if you're watching live. So, what next? That's what one of my favorite guys says all the time. Has anybody ever heard of my friend Lucky Strike? Let's see if we can find his stuff. I saw him in the chat earlier. Are you still here, Lucky? Yeah, he used to be Lucky Strike. Now he's changed his channel to Lucky Smith. And he's got some pretty interesting stuff. Let me see if I can find something real quick from him. We'll set up the old Dan cam going on here. Let me do a little test to see if the camera setup's going to be adequate for me. Does that look good?
Now let's see if I have, yes, I have sound and I'm not hearing myself as an echo. We're great. So hello everybody, it's Sunday. I just want to do a couple of quick affirmations and finish up with something that I created by myself. We're going to start off with everyone watching this video. You are filled with confidence, fun-loving, joyful, happy, carefree, peaceful week. If you cannot be happy, actually, I'm going to give you all 59 doses of happiness. So even though there might be some bad things coming to you in this week, it's just going to turn around and be a happy, peaceful, carefree week. And that's my gift to all those who watch. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is done, it is done, it is done. You don't have to do anything. You now have 59 doses of happiness. Sunday Law of Attraction. I am grateful for this amazing week that I've had. I'm ready for a new one filled with exciting, beneficial adventures. I'm ready for a new one filled with abundance of peaceful, happy prosperity. I'm ready for a new one filled with prosperity. Not only am I grateful, I am excited for this week. I feel the guidance, the support, and the love of the source, God, Earth, beginning engine, Mother Earth, God, the good, and everyone who watches this. Next, I'm going to say the Loretta Enigma's favor and grace declaration. Thus, stronger and more abundantly homes as favored and graced with abundance and joy. Favor and grace allow us to heal others as we speak favor and grace into their Gloria Echo Grace walk with us at.
Well, this one seems to be jumping around a little bit, Lucky. You might want to check that video. But I love your stuff, I really do. I always enjoy your videos. Sometimes I find your wisdom very insightful. I don't know if anybody knows this or not. I have another channel called Danny Dan's The Good Stuff. And every once in a while, usually about once a month, I throw out a video over there on Danny Dan's The Good Stuff called Sasquatch Saturdays. And here in a few seconds, we're going to be taking a look at one of them Sasquatch Saturday episodes.
Jordan, attention span theater. Hey, this is a shout out to the Daily Dan blog. Hey man, I like your videos. I was thinking about you down in Florida, man. Keep up the good work on the videos in the woods. I enjoy them. Daily Dan from the Daily Dan blog. I'm down here in Florida. I don't even know how I got here. I'm down here in Florida with Midwest Bigfoot researchers. I don't know how the hell I got here. I'm smoking a cigarette. I'm going to find me a Bigfoot. Hey, thanks for watching.
I love a good shout out, especially one with a little bit of humor in it. I appreciate that, Midwest. I really do. I hope you get a chance to catch this show later. And I also want to thank my friend Marty Marty Warhorse. You know Marty. He's over at the Cherokee Outlaw channel. He provided a lot of music for my show. I'll be playing his tunes for a long time to come. And this just in, everybody knows my friend Moggs Russell from Moglion Monster channel. Yeah, Moggs. He's out at a Mog Fest right now in Arizona, hosting a bunch of our friends looking for Bigfoot, smoking some blunts, sitting around a campfire. This just in, Moggs has found Bigfoot.
How y'all doing out there, America? This is all Hackman.
He has found Bigfoot, and we're gonna take a quick look at what's going on with Moggs. Hopefully here in a minute.
I know them people up in Connecticut
Moggs!
call it Sasquatch or something like that, but that just shows how long Bigfoot's been around, because that's like an Indian name from before white people ever even got here. So you know Bigfoot real if people been seeing him from that long ago. But I've been telling people for years that Bigfoot really exists, but don't nobody believe me. I've been telling them, yeah, Bigfoot's real. I've seen him many times. So now I done not only captured me a Bigfoot, but I done tamed the Bigfoot. Let me show you. Hey, Bigfoot, fetch me a beer, boy. Bigfoot, fetch me a beer. Hey, Bigfoot, fetch me a beer. Oh, Bigfoot, fetch me a beer.
The latest in from Mugfest. I hope you enjoyed that, dude. That was just for you, my friend Russell, over at Moglion Monster. And now, for something completely different. Yeah, not that different. Let's try this one.
Probably similar to what
Trying to find the right one. And that's not it neither. Wow, this is not good. Okay, I think I figured it out this time. Oh yeah, that's a good one. An episode of Sasquatch Saturday. From Daily Dan's The Good Stuff. You'll find the link in the chat.
Mama, there's a weird sound outside. I don't know what it is, but it sounds weird and it's freaking me out. I recorded the sound while I went outside.
Sounds like Michael Marone, don't it, Max?
Oh, I'm still recording.
But before I stopped the car, I heard this swamping sound, and that's why I thought I had a flat. But I couldn't understand because we just put new tires on, and I could have been making a noise or beating on his chest or the pole. It was only about probably 1 foot from the pole.
You hear in this area, you hear noises at night, I understand.
Oh, yeah.
There
Lots
aren't
of
nuclear
noise.
noises, there aren't air noises.
No. There's no noise to describe it, really. I've never,
Maroon's grandma!
I just never heard anything like it. Cougars don't make that noise. Bears don't.
Ah,
Or
shit.
moose or
Sorry about that, guys.
else around.
Something else is out there.
There's something else out there, okay. And it's not just at night, it's in the daytime too, because they've been hearing them day, night, evening, mornings, even high
Do
noon.
you see things? Is it just the noise?
Noises mostly, other than when I've seen this creature down there. It's real big rock. There's a real wide shoulder just as you go across the bridge, and I just pulled up. I just knew I had it flat, but I couldn't understand. So I got out, and I always keep my right door locked. I get out on the left, and I go around with my back to the woods, and I look up and under my car, around the wheel, no flat. So I feel up in there, and while I'm feeling, I suddenly turn around and I'm face to face with him. I mean, it just feels like, it felt like there was something staring at me. It's why I looked.
You were face to face with?
I looked just about 15 feet from me.
What was it?
I don't know. As far as I know, I suppose it'd be Bigfoot, but he was the biggest animal I've ever seen.
The monster that Mrs. Baxter saw was 12 feet tall, as tall as these bushes behind me. Her story is similar to dozens of others told every year in this area of people who got fleeting glimpses of the Bigfoot.
Well, the first thing we do naturally is sort of check on the people themselves. You have a lot of people who see things all the time. So before we really get serious about one of these reports, we assure ourselves that they're responsible people.
What the fuck are you?
The second step is to find out what they saw.
You've got a lot of experience as a reporter. What's your attitude about Sasquatch?
Well, I've been investigating these reports and so on, and it seems to me
That's what happens when you walk around.
Evidence, and I'm, let's say, 98% that there is such an animal. I want to see one, but I think there is.
Sure, if you don't take that thing as a fake, right?
I think not. It has a possibility of being a real footprint.
What makes you think that might be a genuine footprint?
Well, as we discussed in the locality that this was found, and the area in which we picked this out of was not in a wide open area in which somebody would have free access all the way around, but near this landing site where the trucks drove in was off to the side of the road.
If you assume that is a real footprint, that means that somewhere in your county you must have somebody that can make that kind of footprint.
That's very possible.
Dark brown, with terrible glowing eyes. His head was sort of receding, I suppose that's the word. Big teeth, long hair, I suppose it was 3 or 4 inches long. And big wide shoulders, there was no neck. I mean, it just looked like his head set right in its shoulders. I don't know, I didn't stay around so long.
I would think that he is, if he is a humanoid type, that he's a shy creature, a harmless creature, one who wants to live his own life and keep away from people. Possibly an understandable attitude.
Kind of a likable animal.
I would think so.
Now, I have never seen it, and I've hunted in the woods for years. But on the other hand, I've never seen a cougar. And I felt, and the Board of County Commissioners felt, that we should protect this animal and also the lives of our local citizens. People coming into the area with guns and shooting at everything that moves, we might have a fatality.
I was skeptical to start with from the first report we've got, but after having taken this cast, which seemed to be very authentic to us.
Something is out there.
We think so.
Mr. Lundy, why did you pass the ordinance? What were the reasons you felt it was necessary to have such an ordinance?
Well, after the animal was first sighted, we had people coming in from the outside area with high-powered rifles, and every means to kill the animal. Now, we had an expedition up here from Florida, and it's a scientific group of people and writers, and they've gone into our back area, and they feel very certain that there is an animal such as this.
Bigfoot.
That's right. Some say there is now new evidence, and if seeing isn't believing, maybe your ears will convince you, or not. ABC's John Muller is here with this story. Good morning,
Down on the edge of his seat all morning waiting for this one. Wondering how you got this assignment. Some strange, mysterious sounds have been coming out of a swampy area in Oregon's Blue Mountains for the last few months. The same mountains that are famous for Bigfoot sightings. So, is this a Bigfoot hearing? We'll let you decide. He is the elusive hairy giant of legend, the tabloid hero, punchline, and news diversion. Now Bigfoot, back in the headlines. But it's not footprints, grainy video, or sightings. This time something brand new. Audio. Bigfoot speaks. Listen. Listen again. The high-pitched shrieks and bass roars come from a swampy area in the Blue Mountains of Oregon, a Bigfoot hotspot for decades. The recording given to the Oregonian newspaper. Not impressed? People living in the area are. They've been hearing strange cries in the night since November. Denise Minthorn on the left told the paper she thinks whatever is in the swamp is calling out to another creature. Some suggest it could be a young Bigfoot lost, calling out for his fellow Bigfoots.
These are not just animals. These are a type of people.
Don't tell these guys Bigfoot is a bunch of craziness. They are professional Bigfoot researchers. They've spent plenty of time in Oregon's Blue Mountains.
Well, first, it's more than one. Remember, it's not Bigfoot, it's Bigfoots. There's a misconception out there that we're looking around for this one thing.
One alternate theory, the high-pitched shrieks, could be the screams of local foxes. Of course, it could be possible maybe it's Bigfoot chasing the local foxes. So, the Bigfoot, the noises themselves are a legitimate mystery. 1,500 residents live near that swampy area of the Blue Mountains. Some say they've been scared to go out at night. One guy told the Oregonian even his dogs were scared to go outside.
Community off northern Vancouver Island is at
Sure you did, however.
A community off northern Vancouver Island is at the center of an eerie mystery. People in Alert Bay say they've been hearing strange screams and howls from the forest at night, and the legend of the Sasquatch runs deep in their First Nations culture. As CTV's Gord Kurbis reports, some are now wondering if those legends are real. It's an eerie recording captured on a cell phone of something that's making strange howling noises heard throughout Alert Bay.
We heard it once, and I didn't get the recording, and then second time I got the recording. And that's it was on the back porch. Very eerie.
The audio was recorded just recently on the backside of Cormorant Island. It's been heard by many all over the island.
This summer I've heard it 3 times. I've heard it scream 3 times. But it's been coming here for years.
Whatever's been making the noise is heard primarily at night. Some say it's a dog, but others say that's impossible.
With that volume, absolutely nothing. No dog can make that kind of a noise with that volume.
Art Dick hears the vocalizations just outside of his home. He's convinced the calls are from a Sasquatch. He believes the creature is real because of several previous encounters, like several years ago on a remote island further south when a tree was thrown at himself and fellow clam diggers.
Pulled the tree right out of the ground. The branches were still on it. I don't know anything that can just literally pull a tree with roots and all. I mean, you know, you see that little alder growing out there. You try to go and pull it out, you're not going to be able to do it.
While the howls and screams that have been heard throughout Alert Bay could be dismissed as simply animal noises, you have to keep in mind that Cormorant Island is a location where there is no wildlife. There's no bears, no cougars, not even any deer. And while you can dismiss the noises, there have been plenty of sightings.
One person had seen it. Her father lives in Alert Bay, and she came up to visit her father. So she went up to the graveyard to pay respects to one of her family. And when she went up to the graveyard, she seen it standing there. She turned around and she got out of there right away. She didn't even go to the graveyard.
And a more recent sighting when a group of teens were playing soccer near the band's big house. A large upright creature moved quickly alongside the building in just a few strides.
Yeah, they took off right away. They don't even stay there anymore after the dark.
To Tomorrow on CTV News, a visit to the island by renowned Sasquatch investigator John Bindernagle, talking with witnesses and looking for clues. And we'll travel along. Gord Kervis, CTV News, Alert Bay.
Ladies and gentlemen, in order to achieve an R rating today, a motion picture must contain full frontal nudity, graphic violence, or an explicit reference to the sex act. Since this film has none of those, and since research has proven that R-rated films are by far the most popular with the movie-going public, the producers of this motion picture have asked me to take this opportunity to say, fuck you.
Now in South Carolina, way down yonder, there's a big old critter that likes to wander around my backyard sometimes late at night. Well, it ain't no beaver, bobcat, or bear, 'cause he's 8 foot tall and covered in hair, and the first time I seen him, he gives me quite a fright. Well, he eats from my garden and pees in my grass, and he stinks like a skunk mixed with grizzly bear ass, and he scares my cats when they smell him coming around. Well, he spends his time peeking around trees, and he thinks what he wants, and he does what he pleases, like scratching his butt and making a grunting sound. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, knocking on the trees, chugging rocks and screaming like a troop of chimpanzees. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, running around my place. Are you the missing link, or are you from outer space?
Well, YouTube, what'd you think about that? That was one of my Sasquatch Saturday episodes. And I think that was number 12. You can look them up on the Daily Dan's The Good Stuff. You can always find Sasquatch Saturday in the playlist on that channel. And I said earlier I was going to jump around and check out some friends of mine's stuff. So I wouldn't be telling the truth if I didn't find something from some friends of mine. And my girl, my flock, was up in here earlier. Said I could play anything that was on that channel. And I saw something just the other day I really loved over there. I just gotta find it. We'll play that Southern California stuff real quick. From my flock. Love these kind of videos. So mellow and serene. So who else left in the chat? Give me a check-in. Let me know who's still hanging around. I hadn't seen nobody put a comment in quite a while. And thank you, my flock. I know you're probably asleep now, but thanks for being here earlier. I do appreciate it. And I also appreciate my other friends for being here too. And anytime you're in for some wrestling action and you like a video game, be sure to check out my friend, King Al Oxley. You'll see him in the chat. Love to watch him play some video games over there. Wow. Maybe I should have picked a better game, Mox. Wow, what happened with that one, dude? Looks like I'm picking my friend's shittiest videos tonight, but this is a pretty good one. Wrestling action with King Elmar. And then I'm over on Paranormal Highway a lot of the time.
I'm in fucking.
And he's fucking smoking it up.
Paint shit. And he's in crisp, clear fucking. He's a chief, but actual Native American that's being kicked out of the military, busted down.
Sounds like he's about ready to go kerplunk over there, don't it?
He was cool as fuck.
Yeah, but I love the old doctor. I usually hang with him at night for a little while every night and talk to Dr. Wood.
He told me a secret.
I don't think I want to hear the secret he was told. Yeah, it's so nice that everybody's still hanging out. Ah, my flock, you're still hanging around, girl. Appreciate you. I really like that video you did. I was looking for the other video, the one about the freaky spiders, but I could not find it. No, I love that. That really messed with me. And I want to give a special shout out to my friend Pat McCormack over at the Golden Rage of TV. He gives me permission to use his music, and he does have plenty of music. He rocks it up with all kind of cool stuff. Everybody should check out the Golden Rage of TV. As a matter of fact, I feel motivated. Should I? Look up one of his big monetization. He has commercials. And a lot of commercials he does have. So let's jam with Pat McCormack. And that was Pat McCormack with the theme from I Dream of Jeannie. And apparently it's still the theme from I Dream of Jeannie. I just noticed something really freaky. And this is a special one for my flock. It's everywhere. I was just talking to you about the video, the spider thing you did. And it's ironic that when I look it up on one phone, my flock, it's not there. But when I look it up on the other phone, it is there. That is so weird. So damn it. Excuse me while I go off the chat for a minute. Oh, I guess I ought to turn the volume up. I wasn't using this phone for that. And here's a video from my flock is everywhere that I really love.
The wood spider is the most accomplished of all web-building species. Recently, scientists gave these tiny creatures a variety of psychoactive drugs to observe their effects on web building. When given a minute dose of LSD, the spider's web took on an unfamiliar, minimalist structure. When given caffeine, the web structure was not affected, but the spider's behavior was. Given THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, the spider didn't build a web. It built a hammock, where it lay all day and watched the caffeine spider go. When given alcohol, the spider built a web, found a mate, and raised over 100 young. But the mate got a restraining order, and now the spider can't go within 100 centimeters of the web. The crack cocaine spider figured building webs was for suckers, waited till the caffeine spider was exhausted, then came up behind it and popped a cap in its ass. Nice web, Mr. Crack Spider. When winter came, the marijuana spider had no place to live. It ended up in the crack web as the crack spider's bitch. For more information on the crack spider's bitch, contact the Canadian Wildlife Service in Ottawa.
I love that. That messed me up so bad when I saw it. My flock is everywhere. You have some interesting material on your channel. You really do. But it's funny that when I pulled it up on one phone, I could not find it. But when I pulled it up on the other phone, there it was. That really was some trippy stuff. I don't understand that. Now back to business. I'm not even going to go into my friend Lockbeard's show tonight and everything weird happening over there. It's a little too much for the Daily Dan. It really is. But I know he's not in the chat, and I don't know if he'll show up or not ever. But this is a friend of mine called Cult of Donuts. And he makes some weird videos, but they're interesting.
This exclusive World Report brought to you by BNN Network News. BNN Network News. This exclusive World Report. Live on the scene. Live on the scene in Hollywood. Hollywood, California. Live in Hollywood. The creepy clown is in Los Angeles on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Drinking a bottle of Coca-Cola. 1 liter of Coca-Cola. Caffeine and sugar pouring out of the creepy clown's pores. Drinking Coca-Cola. Staring the tourist, approaching tourist off the tour bus, asking them, where is his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame? Where is his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame? The creepy clown is jumping up and down like a kangaroo, jumping up and down like a kangaroo, and mooing like a cow, mad. The creepy clown is mad, possessed by soda pop, and mooing like a cow, BNN News choppers are live on the scene. This looks like it could be a long standoff. Police negotiators are on the scene, but the creepy clown refuses to leave until he gets a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The creepy clown at this time is demanding a Slurpee from 7-Eleven. BNN Donut Network News will bring you further updates as they come in. But for now, it looks like the creepy clown will be on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in Los Angeles for a while, drinking a liter of Coca-Cola.
I love that guy. Them videos he makes like that, the weirdest things in the world, but they do kind of crack me up. There's so many channels I'd like to give a shout out to, but like I said, I haven't been in touch with too many of them people lately, and I'm not sure they'd want me showing their videos on YouTube. I don't want to get one of them copyright things. them copyright things really suck.
Hey guys, this is Lexus Robocop Dude coming up with another shout out video. This video goes out to the Daily Dan's The Good Stuff. If you guys get a chance, go check out Daily Dan's The Good Stuff's channel. I will post the link to his channel in the description down below. Definitely go show him some love and support, you guys. He is very supportive. He is an awesome YouTuber. He has 2 YouTube channels, but he wanted me to give him a shout out on this channel. Some love and support. He is very supportive. He does different variety of stuff. On this channel, he does different variety of stuff, but mainly on his main channel, he does stuff regarding Bigfoot. I don't know if he wants me to do a shout out for his Bigfoot channel, but if he does, hopefully he leaves a comment on this video and lets me know if I could do a shout out video to his main account. But show him some love and support, you guys. I will post the link to his channel in the description down below, and leave a like, and tell him in the comments down below, and tell him Lexus Robocop Dude sent you guys. I will post the link in his description down below so you guys could subscribe to his channel and turn on the post notifications as well. So thanks for watching, you guys. This is Lexus Robocop Dude signing off for now.
I appreciate the shout out, Lexus. So you can see Lexus in the chat. See, he shows real good support for channels. One of my favorite things is support. I believe in each channel to support each other. What do you say we take down the view thing for a minute and just kick back and relax? And the show should be over right now, and I should be signing off. But for those of you who want to hang around, what the hell? I'll stick around, chill out. Maybe play another song or two. That sound good, guys?
This is called Eagle Mount Road. Out in the hills you can hear the coyotes crying. Thunder and lightning red through the sky. Up around the bend, Granddaddy rode in. You think you're all alone, but there's something in the trees. Something so dangerous it'll bring you to your knees. You fire with your rifle, the barrel's still hot, and out comes a Sasquatch from hell. Breath breathing, fiery hot. Up on Eagle Mountain Road, my granddaddy fought a Sasquatch, I am told. Up on Eagle Mountain Road, my granddaddy fought a Sasquatch, I am told.
I like that song pretty good, don't you? Let me know in the comments below. Even though I could have played it all, but I didn't. I was looking for something a little more mellow, a little more relaxing, a little less Bigfoot.
Years and my life is still trying to get up and ridiculous. Lord, that's still I will ask quickly when I knew I should, and the world was made a much brotherhood of men. For whatever that means. And so I cry sometime when I'm lying back just to get it all out once in my head. And then I feel it a little bit cooler. And so I wake in the morning and I step outside and I take a deep breath and I get really high and I scream out of my lungs, what's going on? What's going on? And then I say, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, what's going And I try, oh my God, do I try? I cry all the time in this institution, and I pray, oh my God, do I pray? I pray every single day for revolution. And so I cry sometimes when I'm bad just to get it all I want in my head and I'm feeling a little bit cooler. And so I wake in the morning and I step outside and I take a deep breath and I get real high and I scream from the top of my lungs, what's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, hey, what's going on? What's going on? And I say, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, what's going on? And I say, what's going on? And I say, what's going on?
Special thanks to Salam Ethra for giving me permission to use these songs here on Da Blog, and you're listening to the after show. The after show of 13 o'clock live. I had Jeff Meldrum on, interview with Jeff Meldrum earlier, and I hope you enjoyed that. I'm hanging out in the after show, played a few songs for the few remaining people still hanging around as it winds down. I feel kind of sad that the live stream will be over. You know, I only do these once a week. It makes me a man of constant sorrow. Oh my God, did you hear that? I'll have to pause that for a minute, my friends. The music was playing, but over the music, I don't know how to explain what I heard. It sounded loud, like a big bang. And it's probably a freaking car wreck down on the highway. You know, earlier tonight, a couple hours before the stream started, I heard a big tree crash down in the woods and heard some weird sounds. I grabbed the Danny Staten channel phone and run down to the woods and made a video. I'll put that video up on the Danny Staten channel tomorrow morning. And you can check out the weird stuff I was experiencing. And right when the stream started, I'd heard some strange noises, but then it just kind of died out. I hear a dog barking in the distance. Everything seems pretty quiet. Here in South Carolina. Have to get a little commercialization in, right? How about another Sasquatch tune? Well, I appreciate everybody joining me tonight. Hey, Shelly, you made it. You might have to start this video over and check it out from the beginning. Had a really great interview on here tonight with Jeff Meldrum. Be sure to join me next Saturday night when I'm going to have an interview with a lady from I think she's from a Cherokee Nation, maybe. She's a Native American lady, and I'm actually going to be able to show that one. And she's going to do a seminar at a library and tell all about Bigfoot and history of Native Americans. It'll be a real interesting night next Saturday night. So if you're into Native American history of Sasquatch, be sure to join me for that. And I appreciate everybody joining me tonight. It's 3 o'clock in the morning here on the East Coast. It's the witching hour, and hopefully I'll be returning to Witching Hour comic books on the Daddy Dan blog next week and doing a few reviews for some Witching Hour comic books. And if you like comic books, you can check out my reviews for the last few weeks on the blog. You know, I kill one day a week with a good comic book, just to take my mind off everything else in the world. So I guess I'll close it out for tonight by telling everybody to be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Be sure to share out my streams. Be sure to tell your friends about it. You know what I'm talking about? I'll do some more shout outs next week. I'll play some of y'all's videos. I'll have a lot more after show time next week because the interview I'll be showing isn't as long as the one I had tonight. And this show did run really long, didn't it, my flock? It really did. And I'm going to close it out with my Bigfoot theme song, the one about the South Carolina Bigfoot in the backyard thing. I kind of fits my thing. So I'll be signing off right after the last song. Thanks for joining me once more.
Down in South Carolina, way down yonder, there's a big old critter that likes to wander around my backyard sometimes late at night. Well, it ain't no beaver, bobcat, or bear, 'cause he's 8 foot tall and covered in hair, and the first time I seen him, he gave me quite a fright. Well, he eats from my garden and pees in my grass, and he stings like a skunk mixed with grizzly bear ass, and he scares my cats when they smell him come around. Well, he spends his time peeking around trees, and he thinks what he wants, and he does what he pleases, like scratching his butt and making a grunting sound. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, knocking on the trees, chucking rocks and screaming like a troop of chimpanzees. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, running around my place. Are you the missing link, or are you from outer space? Now you may wonder, what does a Sasquatch do when he's wandering around at 1:45 in the middle of the night because he's feeling down? Well, he comes on over to visit my house. I think he has a little thing for my spouse, 'cause she always feels like someone is around. Well, he looks in the windows and checks out my wife. Can't say as I blame him. She looks pretty nice in a fuzzy robe as green as the foam of the sea. Well, he stands and he blinks as he ponders and thinks about humans and love, and she smiles so sweet. He wonders what the heck she sees in me. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, stop looking in my windows. I think it's kinda creepy, you voyeuristic weirdo. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, keep your big paws to yourself. Ain't you got a lady Sasquatch to raise your Sasquatch whelps? Well, I made a report to BFRO. Them fellers that got that Squatch hunting show. Finding Bigfoot is what they're all about. They said people see him all the time and make lots of reports that are just like mine. And if you see him too, go ahead and give him a shout. Now I wish I knew some Sasquatch lingo. I'd invite him on over to party and mingle with me and my wife and a few of our closest friends. But I guess I'll smile and just wave hi the next time the big guy comes walking by. Saying hello just might become a trend. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, my big old hairy friend. There's some that don't believe in you, but I will till the end. Sasquatch, Sasquatch, hope your legend never ends. Didn't know that we were neighbors, but I hope we can be friends.
So, from South Carolina, thanks for coming, and dare I say it, blog over, dudes!
Looking for a new Medicare plan during a